Chosen ones, these 3 days will be completely raw. You'll regret ignoring this prophetic date. It began with a calendar no one remembered hanging. The paper was yellowed, edges curling like the pages of a forgotten book. Yet its presence was undeniable. On it, 3 days were circled in crimson ink, thick, uneven strokes, the kind left by a trembling hand. The circles bled through the page, as if the ink itself wanted to sink deeper, branding the date into memory. No one claimed responsibility. No shopkeeper admitted selling it. No family recalled pinning it up. Still, every household had it. The same calendar, the same marked days, no matter where you turned. From kitchens to schools, from the town hall to the smallest chapel, there it was. Some swore they saw the ink still glistening, as though freshly drawn, though the paper felt dry as bone. At first, people laughed. Old men in the diner joked it was some college kid's prank. Teenagers dared each other to rip it down, though each time one tried, their hands froze mid-air, shivering as if touched by frost. Even the town's pastor shrugged, saying, "The devil works in rumors, not calendars." But the laughter didn't last. By midnight, something shifted. Radios, no matter the station, fell into static, buzzing like trapped flies. Phones refused to power on, their black screens swallowing reflections whole. Streetlights flickered until darkness swallowed the town, leaving only the silver of the moon. And then came the whispers. They began softly, too faint to follow, like a breeze brushing against curtains. Yet within minutes, they thickened, rising in unison. The voices did not come from outside. They crawled from inside the walls, from floorboards, from hollow spaces people swore were empty. They spoke in tones both desperate and commanding. 3 days raw, 3 days unbroken. Chosen ones do not sleep through the fire. Children clutched their parents' arms. Dogs howled until their throats gave out. The town, once skeptical, now sat awake in silence, listening to voices no one dared to answer. The marked days had not yet begun, and already the town was trembling. The first morning carried no birdsong, no flutter of wings, no chirp of sparrows perched on telephone wires. Even the crows, so faithful to the fields, had vanished. The air itself seemed stolen, as though some unseen hand had emptied the sky of breath. The trees stood stiff and brittle, their branches unnaturally still, like bones frozen mid-reach. The silence was not ordinary. It was the kind that pressed against the ears, heavy, suffocating, making each heartbeat sound too loud inside one's chest. The town woke, uneasy. People stepped out of their homes cautiously, whispering without knowing why, their voices lowered as if not to disturb something lurking nearby. Shadows clung unnaturally to their heels, stretched long and heavy, refusing to break even when the pale sun rose. Some swore their own silhouettes twitched a moment too late, delayed, as though their bodies and their shadows no longer belonged to the same world. In the square, Father Gabriel stood trembling. His Bible shook in his hands, pages fluttering though there was no breeze. He muttered words too fractured to follow, his eyes scanning the rooftops, the sky, and finally the people who gathered at a distance. "It is written," he said, though what followed tangled into warnings half swallowed, half prayed, until even the devout backed away from him. His voice was not his own. It carried a strange vibration, as if borrowed from something older. A mother hurried her children indoors, tugging them by their arms, her face pale with dread. She locked the door, drew every curtain shut, and whispered, "Don't look out. Don't look." Others followed, slamming windows, bolting shutters, though none could explain what exactly they feared. Above, the sky loomed pale, drained of its familiar blue. It was stretched too thin, like parchment pulled taut until it threatened to tear. The sun itself seemed weaker, a faded coin behind a veil. Then it came, the sound. At first, it was barely noticeable, a low vibration that stirred the earth underfoot. But as the minutes passed, it thickened, rising like a tide. From the tree line at the edge of town, the noise swelled, a low humming, too vast to belong to insects or machines. It carried a strange resonance, like 1,000 voices fused into one endless drone, wordless yet full of intent. And though no one admitted it aloud, every ear in the town recognized the truth in their bones. The sound was not coming toward them. It was already here. When the sun set, the air split with screams. They weren't human, not fully. The sound clawed through the streets like metal against glass, sharp enough to rattle teeth. Windows trembled in their frames, and dogs howled until their voices cracked. Parents held their children close, but no comfort quieted the terror crawling beneath the skin. It wasn't a sound anyone could truly describe. It was older than language, something that made bones ache and blood feel heavier in the veins. The Chosen felt it first. A searing heat rose beneath their skin, as though fire had been poured into their veins. Their bodies trembled, and faint lines began to glow across their arms, their necks, their foreheads. Symbols, curved, ancient, shifting even as they appeared, burned like living tattoos. Some tried to hide them under sleeves or scarves, but the light pulsed through cloth, undeniable, exposing them for all to see. Inside their homes, the unmarked cowered. Families clutched candles, their wax dripping fast as trembling hands refused to keep them steady. They prayed, whispered, or simply stared at their doors as though the wood might suddenly splinter. Fear hung thick, suffocating, but one truth was clear. The Chosen would not be allowed to stay inside. Something unseen pulled at them. An invisible thread tightened around their chests, tugging, dragging them step by step toward the streets. They fought it, clinging to door frames, to railings, but their own limbs betrayed them. Eyes wide, voices breaking, they stumbled into the open, forced together beneath the fading sky. And when they looked down, even the shadows at their feet were moving, stretching unnaturally, writhing like serpents, as though they carried wills of their own. From the forest, the humming deepened. It rose from a low thrum into a piercing shriek that filled every hollow in the night. Birds fell dead from branches. Glass shattered in empty stores. Even the earth itself seemed to groan beneath the weight of the sound. Then it happened. The lights died. Every street lamp exploded in sparks, bulbs popping inside homes, radios bursting in silence. And above them, even the moon dimmed, flickering like a failing lantern. The world plunged into a darkness so absolute it felt alive, pressing against their throats, whispering promises of things waiting within it. The first night had begun, and no one would sleep through it. The second day dawned, but the sun did not rise. Instead, the horizon bled like an open wound. The first light was not golden, but crimson, thick and violent, pouring across the sky until it looked as though heaven itself was cracking apart. The clouds churned in molten streaks, twisting into shapes too jagged to belong to nature. The air smelled of burning copper, heavy and metallic, clinging to every breath until lungs ached as though inhaling ash. Children wept, their small voices piercing the unnatural silence that followed. Mothers pressed their faces into their skirts, whispering prayers that dissolved into sobs. The elderly dropped to their knees on doorsteps and in fields, clutching rosaries, clutching dirt, clutching anything to tether themselves against the sight above. Their eyes streamed, not from grief alone, but from the sheer pain of looking at the sky. Some swore they heard laughter carried in the fire winds, but none dared repeat it aloud. The Chosen burned. Their marks, once faint symbols glowing across arms and brows, now flared brighter than embers. The heat seared through flesh, yet left no blister, only deeper illumination, as though their very bones had been etched with fire. Many screamed, clawing at their skin, begging for relief, but the light refused to dim. Others stood rigid, entranced, their bodies trembling as they felt something vast staring back through them, branding them with a purpose they could not yet name. In the church, where people had gathered in restless silence, the priest finally spoke without faltering. His voice, strained and ragged the night before, now rang with terrifying clarity. He held the Bible high, though its pages glowed faintly, as if lit from within. The raw days strip away all illusions, he declared, his eyes fever-bright. They burn falsehoods to ash. You'll regret ignoring them. Those who deny, those who mock, he slammed the Bible shut, the sound echoing like thunder, will vanish. Gasps rippled through the congregation. Some clung tighter to their families. Others backed away from the priest as though his words alone might scorch them. But none could deny that the fire in the sky above their steeple matched the fire in his voice. Outside, the world shifted again. The shadows, once vague distortions stretching unnaturally, now thickened. They stretched along walls, across dirt, across fields, and then, slowly, they began to rise. Faces formed within the blackness, twisted, gaunt, hollow-eyed. Hands clawed outward, reaching for the living. Their mouths opened in silent screams that carried no sound, yet every ear seemed to hear them. And still the fire sky burned on, as if watching. The ground shook like thunder, though no storm followed. The trembling came in slow, rolling waves, rattling cupboards, splintering fence posts, and toppling lamps from shelves. Dust fell from ceilings, and the earth groaned as if something enormous moved just beneath the soil. People clutched tables, pressed themselves against walls, waiting for the quake to pass, but it did not. The shaking came and went like a heartbeat, steady, alive. Then the houses betrayed their owners. Doors slammed and locked with the crack of splitting wood. Bolts slid across with no hand to move them. Windows sealed tight, some warping as if the glass had melted and re-hardened into an unbreakable skin. Trapped inside, families screamed, pounding on their walls, their fists bruising against barriers that no longer obeyed. From the streets, the Chosen could hear their cries, muffled, frantic, the sound of people begging to be let out of their own homes. The pressure came next. Something invisible pressed against the glass, leaving no mark, no crack, just an unrelenting weight. The panes groaned, threatening to shatter inward. Faces leaned close to the windows, desperate for air, only to recoil as if something leaned back from the other side. Some swore they saw breath fogging the glass, but when they wiped it away, nothing was there. In the square, the Chosen gathered once more. Their marks blazed brighter now, no longer faint lines, but symbols etched in fire, casting pale light across the stone streets. They looked like unwilling lanterns, human beacons drawing each other together, even as the rest of the town hid in terror. The heat from their skin made the night air shimmer, and though they were surrounded by darkness, none of them could hide. It was when a child spoke. Her voice was fragile, quivering, but it carried over the restless silence. "They're not shadows," she whispered, pointing toward the writhing shapes beyond the square. "They're what we tried to forget." The words froze them where they stood, and as they turned their eyes to the shapes in the streets, clarity struck like lightning. These were no longer faceless things. They bore familiarity. The outlines hardened into features. The curve of a mother's cheek, the scowl of a father's rage, the lips of a first love, the glare of an enemy thought long buried. Faces of the dead, faces of the forsaken, faces torn from memory and re-stitched in shadow. One man staggered backward, his voice breaking. "That's my brother. He's been gone 10 years. Another gasped, covering her mouth as tears spilled. She shouldn't be here. The Chosen realized the truth too late. The raw days had not just stripped away illusions. They had unearthed memory itself, giving it form, giving it hunger. The past had come alive, and it was reaching for them. By the third dawn, the air itself had turned against them. Each breath cut like fire and glass at once, searing lungs, scraping throats raw until every inhalation was a silent scream. Skin blistered beneath even the faintest breeze, red welts rising like brands from an unseen flame. The crops that once lined the fields lay in ruin, stalks shriveled, husks blackened, leaves crumbling to ash at a touch. Rivers frothed with a sickly film, their waters bitter as bile, unfit for hand or tongue. Even the animals had fled, or worse, fallen silent and still, their bodies scattered across the roads as though struck by the same unseen hand that smothered the town. The chosen staggered through it, their bodies weakened by pain and hunger. Yet their light grew stronger still. Symbols once faint now blazed with a brilliance that made the eyes of the unmarked ache to look upon them. Their skin cracked, their lips bled, but the fire within them would not dim. Some tried to hide it, wrapping themselves in cloaks, pressing their hands against their skin, but nothing could conceal it. The marks had become beacons, lanterns burning against a world that no longer wanted them. They were meant to carry something, someone murmured, the words trembling with both awe and dread. Yet none of them knew what. Purpose weighed heavier than flesh, and though their light grew, so did their fear. Then it came, a bell. The sound cut through the town without warning, ringing out with such force it seemed to split night from day. No hand touched its rope, no steeple's bell swung, yet the note rolled through every street, every alley, every crumbling house. The vibration shattered windows, splintered glass, until the air itself rained sharp edges. The chosen covered their ears, but the toll lived deeper. It shook inside their bones, inside their very marrow, as if the earth had been forged into an instrument of judgment. At its toll, the unmarked fell. One by one, they collapsed where they stood, mothers clutching their children, fathers gripping tools, the old and the young alike. Their bodies did not strike the ground with weight, for before they landed, they dissolved. Smoke rose in their place, gray tendrils twisting upward before vanishing into the raw sky. Their cries were brief, cut short mid-breath, leaving behind only silence and the acrid stench of charred memory. The chosen watched, powerless. Their own families disappeared before their eyes, vanishing into vapor, faces dissolving like ink in water. Tears burned on their cheeks, but no sob carried long, because grief itself seemed swallowed by the tolling of the bell. In the stunned quiet that followed, the priest's voice broke through, hoarse but clear. His eyes glowed faint with the same light the chosen bore, as if the truth had always lived inside him. "This," he whispered, lifting his trembling hand toward the empty streets, "this is the cost of ignoring the date." No one answered. There was nothing left to say. Only the raw hours remained. The chosen stood alone now. The town that had once buzzed with voices, laughter, arguments, and prayers was silent. Its streets emptied, its homes hollowed by smoke. Only the marked remained, scattered through the square, drawn together not by choice but by the weight of something greater pressing on their skin. Their marks pulsed in rhythm, glowing hotter, brighter, until the light that spilled from them no longer clung only to their bodies. The symbols stretched outward like threads, weaving into one another across the air. Line met line, curve met curve, until the square itself glowed with a pattern vast and terrible, as if the ground had become a canvas of fire. They were no longer individuals, but fragments of a constellation, each mark a star, burning brighter as it found its place. The beams of light rose upward, piercing through the roiling clouds. They did not fade in the fire sky. They carved through it, splitting the crimson horizon with shafts of white. The heavens trembled, and for the first time, the skies seemed to respond, as though acknowledging that the raw days had reached their purpose. And then the visions came. Each chosen fell to their knees as the light forced their eyes inward. They saw not the burning fields nor the ruined streets, but themselves, laid bare in brutal clarity. A farmer wept as he saw the years he had squandered, chasing coin while his family grew cold. A woman gasped as truth she had buried clawed free, lies told in love that had corroded everything she touched. Another trembled, confronted with fears he had spent a lifetime hiding, now stripped raw before him. The rawness was not in the sky, nor in the air that burned their lungs. It was in them. The days had not been sent to punish, but to unveil. The world itself was a mirror, its fire and its shadows a reflection of the secrets they carried within. And the light they bore was not chosen for purity, but for survival, the strength to endure what others could not face. The fire sky split open, tearing like cloth. Beyond it, a brilliance stretched wider than the heavens, and from within, a voice thundered. It was not like the whispers, not like the drone from the forest. This was older, deeper, resonating through stone and marrow alike. You are not cursed. The words rolled like thunder over mountains, shaking the very bones of the earth. You are the last to stand. The chosen bowed beneath the weight of the voice. For the first time since the mark date appeared, they understood. This was not about survival alone. This was inheritance. This was calling. The raw days had stripped away the world. Now, they would strip away the chosen themselves. The shadows did not vanish. They grew stronger, feeding on doubt. One chosen, unable to face his truth, collapsed. His body turned to ash, blown away in silence. The rest trembled but stood firm. The priest, now fully radiant, placed his hands on their heads. Face the rawness. Only then can you walk into the new dawn. The night howled one last time. The ground cracked, open beneath them. It was the darkest yet. The chosen stood surrounded, the entire town replaced by a barren wasteland of shadows. The air ripped, the sky tore. Each chosen screamed, not in fear, but in release. Their voices became weapons, their marks erupting into flames that burned the darkness itself. The rawness devoured everything. And when it ended, silence. The sun rose. Clear, golden, gentle. The marks on their skin faded into scars. The town was gone. So were the unmarked. Only the chosen remained, standing barefoot in fields of new grass where ruins once stood. They had survived the raw days. They had carried the fire. And a voice whispered one last time. You listened. You endured. You are now the beginning.